Welcome home. We are WNST AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. We are taking the show on the road as we always do. We got the NFL draft this week. The Orioles in town, out of town. Luke's running around doing all that. We have been trying to defend democracy in a lot of cases around here while we mix in some sports and mix in some jurisprudence. Trying to mix in a little bit of fun. I got some music and rock and roll and some great sports stuff coming up at the Beaumont on Thursday. We're going to be out on the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery. I will have the Back to the Future scratch-offs to give away. Then we're up at Cooper's North next Wednesday doing a turn for LLS and Leukemia Lymphoma Society on the Burger of the Month, which is always delicious. And I'm going to have some gumbo up at Cooper's North on the Crab Cake Tour. And then on the 30th, we're going to be at Coco's Pub. I'm wearing my Coco's Pub thing, which sometimes makes the folks over Coppin State itch a little bit. It's a little too close to Morgan State. It's a little of that East-West Baltimore thing that I'm used to around here. But everybody knows I'm supporting the Eagles, and Coppin State celebrating 125 years. Big gala going on. I got Coach Stewart coming out. He's going to join me at the Beaumont this week out in Catonsville. Right now, we're continuing our conversations about 125 and the education of HBCU schools and the gem that Coppin is. They've been our flagship for sports for almost 15 years now. Dr. Ericka Covington is a first-time visitor here. She's a tenured associate professor in management and the dean of graduate studies. I always say that's my old job title. I told Kurt Schmoke last week, I'm just a UB graduate trying to make my way through, trying to figure it out. There were always professors and doctors and leaders and leaders of the leaders and teachers of the teachers that always hung out around universities. And it's always a pleasure. I always try to get educated by having folks on with doctors in their titles. Dr. Covington, good day to you.
Good
Welcome in for
morning.
Coppin. Big times at Coppin, right? This 125 is
Yes,
a big deal, right?
absolutely. It's a monumentous occasion for Coppin to be around that long with such a long and rich legacy of education within Baltimore. So it's a big deal for us.
Well, what is graduate studies? And on last week I talked Title IX, and I try to learn. And I always come to folks like you and say, I'm going to ask questions about what you do. Don't be offended. I'm just trying to figure it out. But when I ask football players, they don't like talking about that. So, but on a daily basis, your campus is cozy and small and friendly, and kind of everybody knows everybody. And when I'm over there, I saw Coach Stewart there, and I said, "You had so many people there back at the celebration last month when you put Gary Williams in the Hall of Fame. I couldn't even park. Like just getting around.
Right.
Everybody knows everybody, and I would think that these are troubled times for anyone of color. I'm Venezuelan, DEI, universities in general, anyone who's outspoken. I've been accused as such. What's going on your campus when it comes to graduate studies, and what you feel and hear every day on your campus from young people?
So first of all, our graduate program is very special because it's quite small, it's quite intimate, but we have a huge impact in the community. We've got 15 degree programs, we've got 16 certificates, we've got a doctoral program. So we make a huge impact in Baltimore. And what we normally cater to, we have a lot of adult generations who are coming back, who are looking for that extra edge in their career, who want to get a second degree, or maybe they're changing careers later on in life. So, it's really making an impact. And I think, in Maryland, there's so many colleges and universities that, it's already competitive out here. But a lot of people already come to careers with a bachelor's degree. So, that's kind of the staple. So now, a master's or just a higher level degree is really important if you're trying to be competitive in the job market. Certificates, I think, tend to be more of a draw for the younger generation who just want to get in and, get those quick certifications or certificates and, get right to work or start their own business. But it's important in this day and age to have that little bit of edge so that, you can be competitive and, make more out of your career. So, that's what we do with the graduate school. Small campus, so it is intimate. There's a matter of maybe 3 buildings that you might visit with your graduate studies. We also offer some online courses as well. So it's very flexible. It's a lot of one-on-one attention from the faculty. So, when you're in those richer degrees and, you want to be able to have that one-on-one attention and, really, really touch to your profession, we have that at Coppin. So it's working for us. We are hoping to grow more programs in the future. I think that Dr. Jenkins hates when, people say we're the best known secret in Baltimore. He's like, I don't want to be a secret. I want everybody to know. And that's true. We do want everybody to know that we are a jewel of West Baltimore, and we have very good accredited programs and world-renowned faculty. So we do feel like that we're the staple of West Baltimore. Um, and grad studies is definitely growing. We're seeing more and more students come in for a lot of our programs, especially clinical and mental rehab counseling. That's really growing in this day and age, and people can come in and get their certification set for licensure. So we're seeing huge growth. Also, we're seeing growth in adult education. Teachers coming and getting their certifications and looking to grow within the school system. So there's a lot of growth there. And we're just happy to see it. I think every year it's more and more growth within our grad studies program. So that's
Well,
where
you
we are
say
right now.
certified and certification, and pardon my ignorance on it. I'm not in that
No, it's
part of the
okay.
job market, but I'm on LinkedIn like everybody else, and I see a job posting for this and what the qualifications are. And just in a incredibly literate world, right, where whether it's computers and how they operate, and I did a whole thing on cybersecurity a couple weeks ago, just how your phone works. I think so many of us have gotten teched up to a point to say I'm 56 at this point. I haven't been in a classroom. I joked last week it'd be like Rodney Dangerfield back to school. But if I wanted to change a career at this point and say I want to do something differently, the qualification of having a certification and saying
Right.
I'm qualified, I've studied this, I've spent my time, I've spent my hours, even if I wanted to be a yoga instructor, which might be my
Right.
next line of work. Just the the fact that it's there for you, and if you've already gone to cop, and if you live here, if you're local, even online in a lot of cases, but the opportunities and how life has changed. And I said I talked to Kurt Schmoke last week. Part of it was like my whole college experience happened before 1993. So
Right.
now I'm not true, because I come on your campus and other campuses. Sometimes I'm the guy that comes and lectures now about journalism and free speech and all that stuff after doing this all
Awesome.
these years. But when I come on to campuses now, I'm blown away to think like, oh, how
It's
tough it would
changed a
be if
lot.
I went back, because I'm still holding a pen and everything, right? And I have the keyboard skills that that young people
Mhm.
when I was young didn't have the ability to type. Everybody comes into it with a certain level of
Absolutely.
technology and how they can leverage that technology to get a
Right.
job, right?
Absolutely.
It's about getting a job. It's not about what it would be for me come back and learn something for self-enrichment. But
Yeah.
that's not what the universities are set up for. They're set up to get you qualified to go out
Absolutely.
onto LinkedIn and better your life, right?
Right, right, absolutely. And you made good points. I mean, a lot of the I'm saying older generation, but it's me
I don't
too.
feel old, but I am. When young people look at me, I am old, you know?
I'm right there with you, but a lot of older generations when they come back, when they, sometimes we get students who've retired from their careers and they're coming back to get another degree to start, a second shift per se at another career. And some of them don't have the skills, like you said, computers or especially with AI being so, big right now,
You
they
mean
don't
A1? No, I just had to get that in. I
understand.
just had to get that in. I mean, there is a state of education in the country where we're living two different lives here, where
Right.
we have Washington, D.C. Taking HBCUs and people of Venezuelan descent, and
Yes.
just the general DEI breakdown that's going on here, that has to reverberate on your campus every single
Yeah,
day. I know it does in neighborhoods here, and I've seen it and felt it in the recent weeks.
right,
Being a Hispanic descent myself, just some level of fear going on in the country that I don't. And these are resilient young people on your campus. They've
right,
already been through
right,
COVID, right? And I think that that's a
exactly,
whole different level of this generation that
right.
we're still trying to figure that part of it out, right?
Yeah, it's scary. I think with us being such a small campus, you know, you don't ever want to take the stand that, we're not seen or, we won't be impacted, because we do have a very mixed cultural makeup on our campus. And I think everybody's kind of on edge because you just don't know what's going to happen day to day. I mean, you're hearing about these raids with ICE and students and how their families are impacted, and we do have students from other countries who are attending our campus too, and you don't know how it impacts their families and how the students are receiving it, what relatives are being impacted.
Well, you're
um,
also teaching them that they have free speech in this country, and
exactly.
I'm in business with the government. I have FCC license for 26 years, right?
Right,
So, like, what can I say? Well, we knew the seven dirty words that George Carlin pointed out when we were kids that you couldn't
right.
say, and even those you could say half of those now. And I hear them all the time. But
Mhm.
but the thing about free speech and the Constitution and the things that fundamentally every university in this country on a civics level,
Right.
every student that qualifies on an SAT has been taught civics and what's in the Constitution and Bill of Rights and checks and balances and executive
Mhm.
powers and all of these things. I can't imagine. My mind scrambled as a 50 something based on
Right.
what I was taught and what I know to be here. These last
Yeah.
10 weeks have been very alarming for me, and I hope they're alarming for people of color and young people
Yes.
on campuses. I really do, because it's about them and about their
Right.
future. I've had a pretty good gig here for a while. I'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah. And I think, for any of the younger ones who've never been involved with politics, now is the time. I mean, if you have never been involved or, kept abreast of what's going on in the news, you need to know what's going on now because it impacts every one of us. And you just don't know from day to day, you know, what part of your life is going to be impacted. And, you know, in education, it's all about academic freedom. And, a lot of faculty just wonder, how their research is going to be impacted, the different research topics. I mean, the way they're taking away some of the courses, that focus on diversity in general, whether it's, race relations or it's African American history or, any type of history, everything's being attacked and challenged right now. So,
The doctor, I talk baseball, and they had a Jackie Robinson Day the other day. 2 weeks ago, they're trying to take that
right,
out of the national. And Maya Angelou, and just go down the list.
right.
Roberto Clemente,
Yeah.
Puerto
It's
Rican.
crazy.
They took his number off the wall in Pittsburgh. I mean,
Right,
like, what's next? We take Frank Robinson's statue down in Baltimore. I mean,
right.
that's just a silly baseball thing, but it's not silly at all. It's not silly at all.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because it's part of our history. I mean, it's really sad that, the attack just seems to go after, the varying cultures for anything that's outside of just white America. But, all of the diverse backgrounds make up our history. And it's in essence, they're trying to erase our history. I mean, I know growing up, taking history classes, much of what I learned as an adult, I wasn't taught as a child because it wasn't in the history books. And it was pretty much, washed out of the books because, they didn't want to ever focus on the ugly history that, the United States has on race relations. But it is a part of our history. And I mean, in order to change it, you have to know about it. And so, the fact that all of this is just being wiped away and, the attack of the museums, again, it's our history and that's how you learn. It's just a scary time. And, it's just really disheartening that, in a country that is supposed to be based on freedom, that it's very limited now, and it's really being attacked. So, it's scary. And the only thing I can say is, I just hope that, you know, somebody eventually will stand up and say, what's happening right now is not right. This isn't how everybody in the country feels. I mean, that's the another concern when you travel, or, you have, you know, international people come and visit the country, they're just seeing the outside, what the news is, and, the assumption that all Americans feel the way that, this president is portraying, and that's not the case.
Doctor, I
You
sat
know,
at the bar stool in Toronto 2 weeks ago when the Orioles opened the season. I went up to Canada, and I've shared freely my experiences. And I had a Canadian musician on last month just saying this isn't funny to the rest of the world, and
right.
certainly in places like Greenland and other, just in a general sense. Dr. Ericka
Absolutely.
Covington is here. She's with Coppin State University. I want to once again say she's a tenured associate professor in management and the dean of graduate studies. But I read further down your bio at Coppin, and I see that you had Master of Science in Criminal Justice Administration. You're
Absolutely.
speaking your own language as a Dean of Graduate Studies,
Yeah.
that you were a student of graduate studies in a space of criminal justice.
Yep.
Um, Take me into January 6th and, like all of, I mean, where's the
Yeah.
justice in all of that? It sounds like
Oh
you've
my
studied this at a
gosh.
much higher level than I have, Doc.
Absolutely. With that criminal justice background, I keep my ear to the street just to know what's going on.
Why did
But
you go into that study just as an adult? Because that was a
oh,
master's program, right?
yes, it was. My undergrad and my master's were in criminal justice, but I in my earlier years, I always wanted to go to law school because I always had an interest in criminal justice administration and, just how the law works, and really just our criminal justice system, how we respond to, those who have gone to jail and how they come back and, try to reacclimate into the community. And I think growing up in Baltimore, we've been faced with a lot of challenges, just with the high recidivism rates, and, the amount of young people who really don't have anything but crime to lean to, um, within the community. And, what can we do to try to help our younger generation? We come from old generation of steel mill workers, and, back when Bethlehem Steel was here,
That's
and
my dad, by the
yeah,
way.
absolutely. A lot of Baltimoreans. And there were alternatives to going to college, and you could still get a great job and have great benefits and take care of your families. But, when that closed down, it really hit us hard. Not only for those who worked there, but for their, generations that came after them. So, finding careers now for younger kids who may not see a college path, but, want a good, stable job and make good money, they're trying to find that path right now. So that kind of tied me into criminal justice, and, what kind of things we could do to help the community. So I kind of use Baltimore as my test case with my research, because I'm always looking at ways that I can, improve Baltimore, and make it be the Baltimore that I remember growing up, and the Baltimore that my parents grew up in.
Where'd you grow up in Baltimore? Come on now.
So,
I'm a Colgate East Point, right across from East Point Mall and the 23 bus line. Now,
okay,
I
so
thought it was Essex when I was a kid because the
yeah,
older brothers were going to go to Kenwood. And
uh-huh,
then in 1979, they redistrict and we were going to Dundalk. And
okay,
you can imagine Dundalk racism in 1980 was completely
yes,
Archie Bunker. I had
yes,
never had a black neighbor. I had a black teacher who's still with us. Mr. Statham comes out,
yeah,
plays the piano with us once in a while. But like if you look in my middle school yearbook, there were no people of color. I mean, I was
right.
Hispanic, and that was about as I didn't know anybody else whose
Diverse as
family
it
was.
got,
Yeah,
right?
that's it, right? And then in high school, because of Turners, there was
Yeah,
20%, always 20%. My high school years, and I would freely say, in the high school cafeteria, all the kids from Turner sat at three tables in one end, and all
yeah,
the rest of us sat. And it
yeah,
it wasn't like anything awful that was going on, but I think back 40 years
That's just
later, and I'm like,
what it
that's pretty kind
was.
of awful. That's what we
Yeah,
accepted, and it's kind of how it worked. And they all knew
right.
each other from growing up, so it wasn't necessarily based on any of that. But I grew up thinking that this was like normal. And then
Yeah,
I learned about redlining and blockbuster and all these things that you're
right.
talking about in regard. I still haven't watched The Wire. I've admitted that to David Simon, but my one-time colleague at the Sun. But all of these problems of recidivism and what happens when Annapolis sends troubled people back to the city
Right,
generation after generation. And again, there were
right.
TV shows made about all of this. But your background in Baltimore, where are you from?
So I grew up right around the corner from Morgan, actually.
So you know about Coco's. You remember when?
I do. I do. And I was there when it was the Northwood Shopping Center. You
Absolutely.
know, I remember going there to dollar movies and, I remember, we would go up there and that's where the pharmacy was. And I remember Memorial Stadium,
You could walk to Memorial Stadium from where you were.
absolutely,
Yeah, right down
absolutely. So,
Alameda, right?
uh-huh, uh-huh. I went to Northwood Elementary, so that's my area.
What do you love about Baltimore? You stayed here. I've stayed here. I've had out, I love the world. I travel a lot, go to New York
Yeah.
as often as I can, whatever. But I've made a life here, and I think it's different when you're from here. You see me light up when I find out you're from here because
Yeah,
I'd like to think that universities, institutions do have like indigenous Baltimoreans here
exactly.
to like say like, hey, this can be better. It used to be.
Yeah. I think it's always nice to have a native Baltimorean around because, again, it's like it's that pride, it's that concern for your community. When you have that historic background and you know how great Baltimore was, and I should say still
I
is.
still love Baltimore. Yeah, I say that
Yeah,
all the time.
absolutely.
Every time I sit down in Lexington Market doing a show at Faley's or whatever, I'm like, you got
Yeah,
to come down here,
right.
and see things that have gotten better, things that are
Yes,
getting nicer. The CFG
yes,
Bank Arena and concerts and bringing people into the city. We're going to fix the harbor. We are,
right,
So, I
right.
mean, I'm Baltimore positive, Doc,
Yes,
So, I mean, but
absolutely.
but there is a point where the troubles and the concerns, they are uncomfortable truths. And especially
Right.
when it comes to crime in our city and the
Yeah,
perception of crime that
exactly.
that is
The
more
perception of it.
devastating than the reality of it in many cases. Certainly has been in my
Absolutely.
case.
And we're no different from any other major city. I mean, we always seem to get the attention, but if you look at the Chicagos or you look at Philly or, Washington, D.C. or, other major urban cities, they all have the same issues. And we're all in search of the same answers. We want to make it better. We want to make it great. And, that's how I feel about Baltimore. I've lived some of everywhere, in my life. I've been overseas as well. But ultimately I end up coming back to Baltimore. I mean, all my family's here. I know Baltimore. I still travel, but my love will always be for Baltimore and making Baltimore the place that, has all the memories for me. So, it's important to have a contribution. And, that's what I love about being at Coppin is that I can work within my community and I can help prepare individuals to go back out into the community and make it great. So, it's a good thing for me. I will always have love for Baltimore.
You're a Terp too.
I
See,
am.
I mean, I'm reading on here. I mean, you're about as local as a blue crab.
Exactly.
I'd say Dr. Ericka Covington is here. She is a tenured associate professor in management and the dean of graduate studies over at Coppin State with our partners. Just last thing to throw on to Greg, because I could go all day with you, but I think we could just you come back and have a crab cake. We'll do criminal justice.
Absolutely.
I could even have you West Siders back over to the homeland. I have you at Coco's on the 30th if you want to come by. But
All right.
just the 125 and what I've learned about Fannie Jackson Coppin, and because I was ignorant to a lot of this, and the 125 has brought it up. Like I think of Coppin, and don't tell Dr. Jake, teacher
Mhm.
school and all of that, because
Uh-huh.
I've been here my whole life, just like you as a
Right.
girl here thought it was a teacher school and nursing and whatever. It's a lot more than that, and we promote that and
Absolutely.
brag about all of that at this point. But there is a point, I think, for what the school represents with an African American woman 125 years
Yes.
ago,
Yes.
at that point breaking the
Unheard
law
of.
and teaching and leaving this legacy. I have been coming on the Coppin's campus for 25 years, back to Fang Mitchell, and I told some stories. Stewart played there. I how long
Yeah.
ago it was when Stu's coming out this week, and I didn't know the story, and I didn't know what Coppin. I've never Googled it. I didn't
Yeah.
know Coppin. I've known it my whole life from the box scores and being a Baltimorean, but I didn't know who she was. And if there's any
Right.
little thing I do, I hope every kid on your campus knows a little bit about it because
Absolutely. I think Dr. Jenkins has made it a requirement that you know about Fannie Jackson Coppin. And we have like a beautiful statue of her on our campus. And it's part of our graduation ritual now that, the students march past Fannie Jackson, on the way to, the field for graduation.
hey, no
So
offense, that's different than touching Testudo, is it not? I mean, it's a
absolutely.
different vibe, right? Right?
It's a different vibe. I think everybody still has that, let me just rub on the skirt or just tap her just to get that, vibe of energy. But we definitely have that historic pride with Fannie Jackson Coppin. Just like you said, it was unheard of for a woman to be such a trailblazer in her time. And when we were known as a teachers conference, I mean, a teachers college, there are so many educators out in Baltimore who can say they came to Coppin to be trained to be educators. So, there's a lot of historic value in the education of the teachers out here in Baltimore. And same thing with the nursing program. Coppin nurses really impact Baltimore and the hospitals and, medical community out here. I mean, they have a historic legacy. Matter of fact, they just celebrated 50 years, if I'm not mistaken, celebrating their nursing program, the
Well, there's
nursing
something about
school.
teaching and nursing. We're talking care, compassion, patience, all of these things that don't have much to do with technology or being an accountant or being a
Right.
lawyer to some degree or
Their
whatever.
core careers.
There is a different type of countenance and different type of human. And in many
Right.
cases, it was women who sought
Right.
these roles, right? And Fannie Jackson
Absolutely.
Coppin is what I could go all day. I promised you 20 minutes, and this is what happens. I start to have fun, and we get a half an hour into this. Dr. Ericka Covington is here for the first time. It will not be the last time now that I know she knows Northwood and East Baltimore. So thanks for coming on and having a great chat with us. And
Sure.
for everybody out there to sort of wrap things up, if people are looking to maybe come back and get a master's, come back and extend and thinking, a fart like me at 56 and saying, maybe I should be thinking about doing something other than yelling at sports figures for the rest of my life. There is a pathway at Coppin for someone to reach someone like you and say, hey, I want to make my life better. And this career is sort
Yes.
of burning out and I'm scared and I'm this and that, but I'm ready to move on and do something else, even though I'm not 21 anymore.
Absolutely. Visit us at www.coppin.edu. The path is grad studies, graduate education, master's programs. We can also be reached at graduate studies at coppin.edu for more information. We accept applications pretty much on a running basis, and we're still open for fall 2025. We look forward to serving our community.
Your campus would not be ready for me to make a comeback as a back to school thing. I don't think Dr. Jenkins would want that. Coppin State celebrating 125. We always have fun. I always get to hold my cool Eagles belt buckle up and have some
Very
fun.
good.
And Coach Larry Stewart's allegedly coming by. We're going to talk some basketball, some NIL, and all that good stuff as well. We are getting the Maryland Crab Cake Tour back out on the road. We're going to be at Cooper's North in Timonium next Wednesday, and then Coco's Pub over in Dr. Covington's original home neighborhood over near the Morgan
Yes.
State campus at Coco's Pub. We're also going to be in White Marsh on the 7th of May at Red Brick Station, so I want to throw that out. I'll have some scratch also in the Maryland Lottery. Back to the future, but never back to school. I'm not sure. You say master's program and like the hair, I'm like, oh man, that would be a lot. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm already a master this week. I'm the master of ceremonies for the beer and bots program for the STEM community, for the kids in the city trying to come to Coppin and make our lives better at Mervo and all these other places. So
That's enough
that
masters for you, huh?
yeah, they give me a little thing that says Master of Ceremonies, and I'm like, as long as I can get called Master of something, Master of my own
Right.
domain at this point. Appreciation to Coppin State, celebrating 125 years, celebrating now 14 years with us as our flagship and sports flagship. So if you hear some games on AM 1570, it's our friends at Coppin as well. I
Awesome.
am
Thank
Nestor.
you.
We are WNST AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive with Baltimore people.